Hey Bart, how are you?
Good.
So this is a 2-5 hand from Rivers Casino in Pittsburgh. I
And what's the structure over at Rivers?
think it's 300 to 1K. It's definitely
Okay.
1K max.
Okay. That is a city.
Everything's seven hand.
That is a city and
Sorry?
Pittsburgh is a city and Rivers is a casino that I have never been to. Someone told me that Sugar House, they changed the name to Rivers in Philly too. Is that right?
Yes. Yes, there is now a Rivers Philadelphia.
Yeah. Hmm.
I've never
Interesting.
played there though.
Cool.
So anyway, yeah, all the tables are seven-handed. At this point, we're five-handed. A couple guys got up. 1,400 effective stacks. Villain covers me. And just a little bit of background here. The villain is a very good, tight, solid reg who I've played with a bunch of times. I rarely see him get out of line, just plays solid, good ranges. And in the hand immediately prior to this one, I opened in the cutoff and he three bet the small blind I called. We got to showdown and he showed down two kings. So just this is the hand immediately prior.
Okay.
Just a little background.
Mm-hmm.
Now for the actual hand, I'm now under the gun, five-handed with ace three of hearts, and I open to 20.
This is
The
five-handed. You
cutoff,
said five-handed?
yep, five-handed.
Okay.
So I open ace three of hearts to 20.
Mm-hmm.
The cutoff to my left calls,
Okay.
and then the button, who's the main villain here, three bets to 80.
Okay.
Folds to me, and now at this point, I'm thinking that I don't want to call and give the cutoff, a great price, and then I'm going three ways out of position to a flop with ace three of hearts. That doesn't seem very good to me. So I'm thinking either four bet or fold. Most of the time, I'm probably folding here. But given that we're five handed, I'm under the gun, I can represent a very strong range four betting under the gun. And I think the button can also be three betting a little wider, given that there's that dead call in between us and we're five handed. So I thought that by four betting, I could represent a very strong range and sort of fold out slightly more hands from the button than I would otherwise, given that we're five handed and there's the caller.
Well, let me
So
let me
I
ask
decided.
you let me ask you a simple question. Are you
Mhm.
stronger when you four bet under the gun five handed, or are you stronger in this configuration four betting under the gun nine handed?
Nine handed for sure.
Okay, because you, I took from what you just said that you're like, and yes, I get the fact that you're under the gun, but you just keep that in mind though too, that it's five
Right.
handed. So, and
Sure.
this one's kind of interesting because I wonder if your hand is too good to fold anyways. Like calling is better than folding. Obviously,
Mm.
you're incentivized to four bet with some of that, that dead, especially if this guy's like V pipping wide here, in the
Hmm.
cutoff. People will, people sometimes don't get the sizing right though, because they've always sort of learned from the book like that a four bet is like 2.2. And that's really a cold four bet, not a situation where you're 300 big blinds deep from out of position. Because if you were to four bet to like 2.5, the guy should be calling with every single hand he three bets with, right?
Right.
I mean, this it was just so I mean, listen, I've made this play before for sure. I don't know if it's necessarily the most profitable one to four bet here, but okay, I can I can get on board. It just the ace three suited might not quite be good enough. Maybe you keep it to the ace four, ace five, ace ten, ace jack suited plus. But okay, what did you
Okay.
make your four bet sizing to?
I four bet to 275, so like 3.5x.
Yeah, and I think that that's good sizing as opposed to some people that will make it smaller than that, right?
Right, right.
So okay, so you make it 275. Yeah,
Yeah, I make it 275, cut
yeah.
off folds, and
Mm-hmm.
now the villain on the button thinks for a little bit and puts in a call.
Okay, so button calls. I mean, you four bet to 275, so the pot's going to be like,
570 after rake.
right. Before he calls, it's 355, 370, and it's about like one nine. So he was getting about 2 to 1 on the call, right? On the
Hmm.
flop. And now it's like 570, something like that.
Yeah, 570 going to the flop.
Okay. All right, let's go to the flop.
So the flop is eight of spades, seven of diamonds, four of spades.
Eight of spades, seven of diamonds, four of spades. So,
Flop nothing except a backdoor wheel draw.
right, you don't have a backdoor heart draw.
Right.
So what's interesting again, whenever you get into four bet pots, most of the time you're supposedly quote unquote like allowed to make a C bet. unless it's like the craziest board. And this is not the craziest board, by the way.
Mhm.
For sort of smaller sizing, 4-bet pots get kind of interesting, especially at deeper, stack depths, because the pot's 570. You've got, I mean, you guys have about 2 pot size bets left. It would
Right.
be interesting. I obviously didn't do this, but this is where, even when playing live poker, I think that this is where if you start to go to like a computer tool, it could be really, really helpful to take a look at, oh, I'm in kind of a spot that I don't get in all that much. It's a 4-bet pot, in this particular configuration. Like, what hands are bet and what hands are checked, and for what sizing,
Right.
in optimal. And then you just learn from that. You don't have to follow that. So I don't know off the top of my head. I would just assume that on a board that's just not the worst connected, you're allowed to see bet, for somewhat small sizing here. What did you
That's
do?
sort of, yeah, that's what I was thinking. I obviously I don't have a whole lot going for my specific hand here, but I figured after four betting from under the gun in this configuration, I can pretty much get away with just range betting here for like 40% pot, and it can't be that bad. So that's what I did. I bet 200, and the button thinks for a bit and calls.
Okay. That's a little bit bigger than probably what you could take for 100%. It would probably be, especially at this stacked up, a little bit smaller than that, maybe like 150 or something. But okay, you bet 200 button calls. Pot is
Okay.
770, and you guys have like what, 900 left or so, something like that.
Be about 970, I think,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
570,
Okay.
200, 200.
Yeah.
So then the turn is the four of hearts. So the board pairs.
Okay.
Flush draw misses, but that's not all that relevant here.
Mm-hmm.
So now on this turn, this was one of the decision points that led me to call in because I didn't really know what to do here after, because I obviously have nothing going for my hand.
Right.
Um, and after he, obviously calls the four bet pre-flop, calls my C bet on the flop, I don't know how often he's gonna like. I don't know if I can get folds from like queens and jacks or even tens here if I just bet pot.
I think a more interesting scenario would have been is if you actually bet 125 or 150 on the flop, and then you were sort of left with a smaller pot and still somewhat of an awkward stack size. I mean, I think if you had bet something like 150, the pot would be 670. You'd have about 1,000 left. You could probably still take like a 1/3 sizing and then give up if he continues to call. The way that you've played this hand by betting 200, I think you just have to check fold now, because it's really hard to bet an amount where you're not going to necessarily be kind of, I would say, almost like pot stuck. I mean, I guess you could bet like 300, right? If you bet 300 here, and he could probably be 1370, and you'd have about 600 left. So 300 is about, I mean, I guess, I mean, what if you were to go 1/3 here again, if you had bet like 250 or something like this? Um, if you have 975 left, I think I might want to go 275 here and then give up. And I think this is a good card for you. You just have to watch the pot size and try to kind of figure out like the fold equity scenario. Because like if you got 975 left, if you could bet 300 and then just give up at the end, I don't see how this 4 really helps him, right? Like unless he continues to have an overpair. But if you had bet smaller on the flop, his flop range would be wider.
Yes, yes.
And here, though, when you bet 200, I just don't know if you're getting like the flop sort of peels with some of these other, queen, jack of diamonds hands, which, by the way, you're ahead of. So this
Right.
is somewhat of an awkward spot. What did you do?
I thought for a little while and basically just checked giving up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and he actually checks it back.
Okay. Check, check. Okay.
One more thing before we go to the river. So you were recommending betting smaller on the flop to keep his range wider so that I can then bet a small sizing on the turn and get more folds. Is that correct?
Well, the theory goes is that you can start a small bet on the flop, and then you have two sizings usually on the turn, right? You have a smaller and sort of a close to pot size,
Yeah.
but with this SPR, that's usually kind of in a single race spot. With this SPR, it gets a little bit on the dicier side. You still might be able to get away with betting the sizing that you did and continue with a 1/3 sizing. I just don't want you to get pot stuck. Again, if we're talking about theory, your particular hand, your stack size, I don't know the answer off the top of my head if we're talking about the actual theory of it. I would just say that betting a little bit on the smaller side on the flop will allow you to have those two options for sizing on the turn, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
So it goes check
Okay.
check in the pot 770. So what's the river?
I think pot should be what is the pot? It should be about
Oh, 970. I'm sorry.
I
Right?
think. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
You actually only had one pot size
I had
bet
a pot
left.
size bet,
Oh, okay.
basically.
Yeah. But I think you could on that turn you could still get away with maybe betting
Like 350
300,
maybe.
yeah, 300 something like that and give up. All right, so 970, let's go to the river.
The river now
8744 by the way.
8744.
Yep.
River is an ace of diamonds.
Okay. So river's an ace of diamonds.
Yeah. So this card kind of caught me off guard because when I checked the turn, I was basically done with the hand and giving up. And then
Mhm.
this ace just kind of woke me up again. And now I kind of went into the tank and didn't really know what to do here.
So
And I was
you
thinking,
have one pot size bet left, right? Basically.
right, right.
Yeah, this is an interesting one whether you would bet here for value to try to. So this is one of the things though I have learned from the computers is that you would not polarize. I don't think you would polarize the spot though if you were to bet for value. I bet you this would be like a 1/3 and it would put like hands like 8x, 9s, 10, something like that that might have been checking back for pot control, like kind of in a tough spot. So you have that option, right? Kind of a
Yeah.
smaller type of value bet. And then the other option is to check call. But I don't know if we're ever really inducing bluffs here on this card. All those pot control hands are just basically going to check back. So I kind of want to bet a little bit sort of on the smaller side. The other thing that, of course, you have to worry about in a 4-bet pot here is that you could be beat now with a better ace. I mean, somebody could have ace queen, ace king, ace jack here, something like that. He checks back turn, so he didn't bet for protection. I mean, if you're gonna check call no matter what, I don't see why you wouldn't bet for value. I just don't know if you're really ever going to induce a bluff here from
I was struggling.
from some hand.
I
You
was
know what I mean?
struggling. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I definitely agree with you that there's not really a whole lot of natural bluffs for him to have here if I were to check to him. But also at the same time, it's like if I value bet, I don't really entirely know what I'm getting value from because I feel like he's only calling me with stronger aces. Because my hand after I check the turn looks like it could be ace king a lot of the time. And then so if I bet this river, he's basically going to fold out all of his over pairs that check back the turn for pot control. And
Is
then
he
he's just
though?
going to call me
Is he though? Like
with ace king.
if you put yourself in his spot and you did some pot control with like tens, jacks, something like that, even queens, and then the river's an ace, and then you were faced with like a $350 bet at the end. So the pot would be like 1,300, 350 for you to call. That's a tough
Yeah.
spot getting like what almost 4-1. I
Yeah,
mean,
it
I know
would
you'd have to
make,
like invent a bluff, but still. So
yeah,
you ended up checking?
yeah, I tanked and I checked because I just didn't think that I would get those calls from tens and jacks and maybe even queens if he somehow checked back the turn with queens.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I also figured that if I checked to him, he would probably just check back with most of those big pairs that check the turn for pot control.
Yeah.
Um, and so I figured I could probably get to a showdown against hands that I beat, and if I were to bet, I would only get called by better. And if he bets, then I'm probably up against a higher ace. And so I checked to him for all those reasons. And then he like pretty quickly just shoves. Like I don't want to say it was like a snap shove, but it was like within 5 seconds he went all in. So he put me all in for basically pot size bet. And
So pot size bet, you're getting 2-1, right?
yeah, yeah,
I mean, I think the way that this hand is played out, you have to call. I mean, if I didn't know, even in live poker, if I didn't necessarily know what was going on, like with this guy, it's I don't know if I can fold here. The hand is played so strangely. Where you get into trouble is if you're up against the guy that would do this with ace king, like as a merge, which of course would be a good bet, right? Like if you're on the button
yeah,
with ace king, I mean, it's the nuts, right? And
right,
maybe even ace queen, to be honest with you.
right. Ace queen of spades is very natural to have here off the flush.
So, I mean, and if you're up against a good player that can make those types of bets, then it's very, very dicey. But
Yeah,
I
definitely
don't.
one of the players in the game.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't. He is one of those players.
Well, I don't know if he's going to be. He's definitely a very good player. Like he's one of the better players who plays in the game, but he's also very tight and just a solid player.
I think
Like
I
I've
would.
never.
I think I would fold that. To be honest with you,
Yeah,
I think I would be. I think if he was like a winning type player, kind of solid, I just. I think I would fold. Of course, he's got sandbag hands here too, right? Like hands where he flopped a set and then didn't
right.
start betting on the turn. The pot's
I don't
already
think
built up, you know?
I don't think he can really have eights or sevens here, like eights full or sevens full. Because is he three betting eights and sevens on the button? I
Right.
feel like he all those.
Yeah. Yeah. So what did you
So
end up doing?
I'm putting him in an ace king, or I'm trying to talk myself into a call by like thinking about if he's ever turning tens or jacks or even queens into a bluff here, and just getting me to fold out.
Oh, I don't think that would be shocking. You think
Yeah,
he's turning queens or jacks into a bluff here?
maybe not queens, but I feel like jacks or tens because my hand now. I mean, from his perspective, right? If I tank check the river, it looks like I hate the ace. It looks like I might have kings or queens that somehow check the turn, even though that doesn't make a lot of sense.
I don't know. I mean that's a huge read. That's like, yeah, I mean not only does he have to check back the turn, but everyone goes to showdown with those hands. I mean, this guy's he's gonna check back with jacks, and now he's gonna bluff the river ace when he's trying to play pot control to bluff you specifically off of kings. I think that's going too deep with it. So what did you end up doing?
I folded. For all those reasons, he's a tight player.
Uh-huh.
It's unlikely that he's turning tens or jacks into a bluff. So I folded. It hurt me a lot. But I'm wondering from like an MDF standpoint, this probably is a super, super exploitable fold. Because if I'm folding ace three here, this is the strongest hand I'll have, given that I check the river. Unless I'm checking with ace king, which I'm probably not.
Well, you mean in this specific line? Sure. Yes, in this specific
Yeah,
line, if you were going to be betting ace king, ace queen, it is probably one of the strongest hands that you're going to have, right? So if he's betting pot, right, you need to defend with 66%.
50%.
Excuse me, 50%. You're
Okay.
getting pot odds, right? You need to defend with 50% of hands, right, for it not to be for make it him
Yeah.
a profitable bluff. I get that. I just I think that this again would speak to what I think would be an underbluffed scenario because he still has to arrive here at the end with basically what would be a float that doesn't bet off on the turn one check to, and
Yeah.
then blast this river. Did you ever find out what he had?
No, I didn't. I asked him to show a card. I asked him if he'd show if I folded. He didn't say anything. So I never found out what he had.
And again,
But
I definitely agree with you in your thought, and you're not going too far down the line. What I would just say though too is that there are certain patterns even amongst good players in live poker. Underbluff spots check raise on rivers, underbluff spots four bet pots too, right? Four bet
right.
bluff. But you do make a good point though that as played because of the check on the river, this is going to be one of the strongest hands that you have. So if you wanted to play an MDF, then yes, of course, this would be a call. So it
Yeah.
can't be that bad to call, right? It's probably pretty close. I like the hand, though. I appreciate the call. Thank you very much. Thank you for calling in. If you like what you've seen here, please hit the subscribe button. And if you enjoyed this call-in hand, hit the like button down below. To check out crushlivepoker.com, click on the link in the description. Use the code YTA300 to get the first 30 days for free.